Hey guys, Captain Dylan Hubbard here at Hubbard's Marina, and it's time for that live stream show. You guys ready to win some free trips? You ready to get some free stuff? We're giving away $1,500 in free stuff. We're answering your questions. We're talking fishing, talking weather, telling you what's going on now, what's coming up, and more. Welcome to our Sunday night live stream show. We do this every Sunday night right here on the Hubbard's Marina Facebook, YouTube, Trovo, Twitch, and soon, hopefully, our TikTok channel, plus Instagram as well. Welcome to our Sunday Night Live stream show, and hopefully you guys are excited for a good time. We're going to be talking a little bit about what's going on now, what's coming up. We're going to be giving away free stuff. Now, in order to win some free stuff, you do have to like and comment on the Hubbard's Marina Facebook stream. You can watch on YouTube, you can watch on the Real Animals Facebook page, you can watch on Trovo, Twitch, or any other Facebook page that we're multi-streaming to. However, you do have to go over to the Hubbard's Marina Facebook page, like the live video, comment anything you want, comment something. Tell us where you're watching from, preferably. Make sure you like the video as well. And then, if you would, share it as well. And that's how you're entered for a chance to win. Then you have to watch live. You do have to watch live in order to get a chance to win, because at some point throughout the show, we're going to randomly announce names, and your name's going to pop up on the screen. You got about 5 minutes to claim that free trip by texting us your full home address. That proves you're actually watching live. So make sure you comment once, you like the video. If you could, share it for us, that helps. And then also make sure you watch live. Now, also want to make sure we give a shout out to our friends over at Gator Gyms Tackle. If you haven't stopped by to see our friends at Gator Gyms, you're missing out. 3301 Pinellas Point Drive South in St. Pete. Stop by and see our friends at Gator Gyms Tackle today. Huge selection, killer deals, awesome people over there at Gator Gyms Tackle. Make sure you stop by and say hello and tell them Hubbard's Marina sent you. And you get a free gift for the young angler in your life who comes with you. So make sure you stop on by, tell them Hubbard's Marina sent you, and check out their huge selection and killer deals. Also, want to make sure we start off the show by giving a shout out to all of those of you who are sending stars tonight on Facebook. Really appreciate all the stars. It helps fuel what we do here and makes the show possible. Glenn Foster, appreciate you, man. Tim Harris with a big 1,200 stars. Thank you, buddy. James McCollum with a big 500. What's up, Robert Riggs, Yukimi Barker, Crystal Tripp, Don Venning with a big 830 from the IRB Trash Tribe. Glenn Foster, Ashley Lamont, LaShonda with the big 500, Ed Mack, Jenny Wilkins, Sean Gossier with the big 550, thanks buddy, Keith White, Angie Darling, Brian Eakins, Robert Riggs with the big 500, thanks my friend, Jasmine Marie, Todd Stutzman, Adam Franklin with the big 500, thank you my friend, Larry White, Craig Robinson, Richard Harcourt, and Richard Harcourt with the big 400, Ashley Pettit, and Sam Lang with 830. Thanks, buddy. So appreciate all of those sending stars. Also want to make sure we give a shout out to our supporters group who make the show possible as well. It's only $4.99 a month to join the supporters group, and you get behind the scenes access, you get more communication, and you sometimes see some funny things that kind of go on behind the scenes. Like today we had a funny post out there in that private supporters group. Plus, you have access to the private after show that we do after every one of these live stream shows. We do the little private after show in the supporters group. So it's only $4.99 a month, and you get that access to the supporters group. So check it out. Also, John Herman Sr. with a big 1,000 stars. Appreciate you, buddy. Phil Batista, appreciate you as well. Thank you guys so much. Now, let's go ahead and pop on over to the photos and show you guys what we've been catching inshore, and then we're going to work our way near shore and offshore, show you what we're catching there. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the weather. Then we're going to get into some announcements and then your questions. So let's first start off by looking at some photos inshore. Right now, inshore, we are seeing some of these redfish Mostly overnight, early morning, and dusk. During midday, it gets a little bit tricky, but if you're fishing those mangrove shorelines that are shaded and casting that bait right up into the shade, you'll have a good chance for some of those redfish for sure. Seeing some solid redfish around the area, and snook action has been super, super heavy out on the beaches, in the passes, early morning, and then at dusk, and then during the day, like the redfish, they're seeking out that shaded area, those deeper spots, water moving, and a little bit of reprieve from the heat. Our friend Scott Sadorf has been busy out there on the beaches, sight fishing some big, beautiful snook, the occasional big bluefish as well. Our friend John Sasser in John's Pass, crushing plentiful snook, seeing a lot of big trout too. The action is definitely best when the water is a little cooler. At night, early morning is going to be your best bet. You can see here, you are finding them during the day, especially out on the beaches. That incoming tide pushes a little bit of that Gulf water in and gives them some reprieve. So during the day, you're going to find them out on the beach occasionally. If you can find a spot where there's not a lot of people in the water, you'll find some snook moving around the beaches too. Also, if you go out to our Shell Key Ferry and head out to Shell Key Ferry, fish that west side of Shell Key, pretty good around there too. Mostly during the week. The weekend, there's just too many boats and too many people in the water. It kind of messes things up. Some big trout being caught, deeper flats around the bridges for sure. And then at night, John's Pass Bridge, a lot of our local bridges holding those trout pretty heavy. During the day, you're finding them in those potholes and on those edges and in those deeper areas and out on the beautiful beaches as well. So some good inshore action going on. Also around John's Pass, a lot of mangrove snapper. We're seeing a ton of mangrove snapper already, and really some surprisingly large-sized mangrove snapper around the pass. Most of the time you see a lot of those 6, 8, 10-inch mangrove snapper. We're seeing some 12, 14-inch mangrove snapper occasionally around the dock. It's pretty awesome. And even occasionally bigger than that. So some really good-sized mangrove snapper moving around right now early in the year. As we move into more summer, we're going to see a lot of those smaller mangrove snapper. We're going to see more mangrove snapper, but the average size inshore definitely drops down. Let's move a little bit near shore and offshore and show you guys what we're catching a little bit deeper. Red grouper action going real well for us. Seeing some solid red grouper on our 10-hour all day. Some days we're catching quite a few. Other days we're catching a handful here and there. But we are seeing some real nice ones, and we're working hard after those red grouper. And we got out there on one of our other charter boats that doesn't do as many trips. This is my dad's personal boat. That's also one of our charter boats. Doesn't take it out very much, but he had some friends in town. They did a little charter, and they caught some really nice mangroves. Big African pompano, a few nice big red grouper, and you can see that weather cooperated for them real nice right there before the start of red snapper season. Solid red grouper from our 10-hour all days. Our friend Taria sent us these red grouper from her personal boat. Here's one of those big mangrove snapper that they caught on my dad's boat. That's Capt Mark there on the left. And of course, you all know John Boy. And they did pretty well out there hunting those mangrove snapper at night on the Mr. Hub. Some big red grouper on the 12-hour extreme. Now that red snapper season's kicked off, we're going to be hunting these big red grouper along with big red snapper. Challenge has been weather. We have not made it out there yet. Tomorrow should be our first day where the Flying Hub 2 is able to make it out there and go crush some red snapper. So looking forward to that. Some big red grouper from our personal boat trips around the area. Crushed these using jigs. The slow pitch jig action was working really well. Some big red grouper from the 12-hour extreme trips. And Taria, another red grouper near shore. Look at that 10-hour red grouper. That is a solid fish. And we're seeing some of these on the 10-hour all day. Like I said, some trips we're getting a handful. Other trips we're seeing quite a few. So it just depends. But overall, pretty good bite on the 10-hour all day. This one's from a 5-hour half day. Even seeing some red grouper occasionally on that. But it's not something we really regularly see on the half day. But it does happen from time to time. Red snapper season has kicked off. This one, unfortunately, was a catch and release fish prior to season, but now we're able to keep them and exact our revenge on the red snapper. But red snapper season does make things a little busy, especially at the start of season. So a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, yeah, trips are full. And trips are pretty full the first couple weeks of June, but the end of June, things start slacking off. We do have plenty of room on our 39 and 44-hour trips still at the end of June before red grouper closes. Then July, we have a lot more room, still plenty of fish to go out there and catch. And, of course, red snapper season goes all the way through end of August. August 27th is the last day for us to catch those red snapper. Remember, red snapper season is June 1st through August 27th. Triggerfish are open all year except for June and July. We've got amberjack open May, September, and October. We've got red grouper open January 1st through the end of June. And then we've got our gag grouper season open September 1st for 1, 2, maybe 3 weeks this year. So very short gag grouper season will start September 1st. So keep that in mind. Book early and book often for those gag grouper for sure, because it's going to close quickly. Now, with that, let's talk a little bit about the weather. Show you guys what's going on with the weather. It has not been great, but it's looking up. It's looking up for sure. So, fishing trips and then weather links. So, right on hubbardsmarina.com, if you click fishing trips, second one down is weather links. It brings you to our beautiful weather links page. We're going to hop over to the 5 and 10 hour forecast to start. Oh, that's not great. What's going on down here? Yeah. We're going to look at that next. See what's going on down there. This is, what is this? The GFS model, right? Yep. Wind finder. All right. So let's not get carried away with that first. We're going to look again this time of year, only looking maybe 4 or 5 days out. 6 days, maybe. This time of year, you start to get a little bit more solid forecast. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but you can look a little bit further ahead this time of year to get a general idea of what's going on. It's not that time of year that's super, super hard to predict. There are things about this time of year, like tropical systems, that get a little bit difficult to predict, but you can be pretty solid in the forecast 4 or 5 days out. So we can look a little bit further ahead and have a good idea of what's going on. But keep in mind, like, for example, we're looking over here for a second at June 11th. That is 9 days away, right? And that forecast is useless. So don't even bother looking over there, because while it might give us an idea, it's not anything that you can count on, right? A forecast, anything beyond about 7 days, if you like share it, other meteorologists laugh at you, right? It is totally a guess, a 50, not even a 50. It's like a 30% chance that it might actually hold true. So you can look ahead past 7 days, but not really. You can't take it to the bank until you're about 5 days, 6 days maybe out. So keep that in mind this time of year, because you're going to see a lot of these big spikes. Potential tropical development, for example, and that could totally go away. So don't get freaked out if you open Wind Finder and see something like we're seeing down here June 11th, 40 mile an hour. Don't start canceling and moving plans, because again, that's 11 days out. Things can change very drastically. So only looking 4 or 5 days out. So back to that. Tomorrow, Monday, things finally start to calm down a little bit for us and start to look pretty nice. Tuesday's pretty solid. Wednesday's gorgeous. Thursday's a beautiful scorcher, but beautiful. Friday starts to pick up a little bit, but still 10 miles an hour, so real nice. And then Saturday, we get that westerly flow, more of a moderate wind, moderate sea. So the weekend might be a little bit more moderately breezy, and we're not going to really look past the weekend because that's 7 days out, right? And we're not going to really get a good idea of what's going on. But in the heart of finding out what's going on, we're going to pop over to spaghettymodels.com. our ultimate forecast. And again, that's right on hubbardsmarina.com. Click Fishing Trips, click Weather Links, and then right on this Weather Links page is Mike's weather page, spaghettimodels.com. This website is where I spend a lot of time this time of year. And I like on the, I guess this is the third column right here on the side. I like this column. If you scooch down a little bit, about halfway down the page, it gives you what we call prog charts. And these kind of give you a good idea of really the next 7 days. And again, like I said, that's all you want to look at. So Wednesday, like I said, is beautiful, moderate high pressure. Thursday is real nice, so that high pressure is just sitting on us. So it's going to be sunny, blue skies, and scorchingly hot. For Friday, it starts to pick up a little bit. The wind, remember, a little bit more moderate. Friday, not bad, but you can see why right there. You can see that little trough picking up on us. And that trough is going to create that wind. And then we move into Saturday. You can see that moderate wind Saturday that we were expecting or looking at is caused by a cold front pushing down on us. And then Sunday, it really picked up, and they were calling some crazy weather Sunday. But again, this is really far out, super hard to forecast. We're not going to count on it, but you can see why. That front that pushes down stalls. There's a front behind it. There's a frontal boundary here, and there's a high pressure. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 pressure troughs fighting over our area. That's what causes bad weather. But it's also 4 pressure systems that they're trying to forecast, and that means they have no clue. That is a 20% chance that actually holds true. So if we jump back over here and look at Tuesday, June 11th, which is, again, 11 days out, they call for this crazy, crazy forecast over here. But, again, it's not something that you can count on because it is just so far in advance, and they're trying to forecast where these 4 frontal systems will be 10 days from now. So not a lot of confidence that that will hold true. But we're going to pop back over to Mike's weather page and look at some of these models, because this is that time of year where we get to look at models again, and I enjoy. I got to learn how to use these websites again. Every year I get lost and have to relearn everything. Let's see here. I'm going to zoom forward to Friday, Saturday. Yeah. A little something brewing. Yeah, see, this is really far out, though. So this is Wednesday, June 12th. So that's why you don't look that far ahead. But that could potentially be our first tropical development. Potentially. But again, no one puts any faith in these, and these change very drastically. But there she is. Potential. Something to watch. Mid-June. And that's kind of on brand for our area for sure. June 1st was yesterday. Red snapper season kicked off and hurricane season kicked off. It is that time of year for sure. So that was the weather. Wanted to make sure we talked a little bit about what's going on now, what's coming up, and then the weather, of course. So real important to take away from that whole weather discussion is this week looks beautiful. Tomorrow's starting to look good. Really looks good. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday picks up a little bit, but not too bad. Then potentially after that into like June 10th, 11th, we start to see potential for some of that adverse conditions, but it's early and just something we just kind of watch out for, right? With that, I want to tell you guys a little bit of a story. I think most of you have seen this, but it is a short story. So we're going to play it anyway because I want to make sure everybody has had a chance to hear this awesome story. So let's see how I can do this. There we go. So full screen. Play. They'll be able to hear this, right? Cool. It's really quiet, isn't it? I don't think they can hear it. Yeah, I don't know. It seems that we're having some trouble, but long story short, what happened was one of our 3-hour shell key shelling trips was out there at the island, and essentially what happened was our first mate, Braylon, was on the other side of the island, and the boat was having a little trouble at the beach. The anchors were kind of pulling, and the boat needed adjusting. So Captain Greg was on the boat. Braylon, the first mate, was on the other side of the island. Greg called Braylon back to the boat to help him adjust the anchors, and she just happened to be walking back to the boat at a hurried pace to get back to the boat to help the captain readjust the anchors. And as she got back to the boat, all of a sudden screams erupted down the beach, and Captain Greg was like, hey, go see what's going on. I'll keep the boat here, and we'll handle that after you go see what's going on. So she runs down the beach to where the screaming's going on, and there was a lifeless body, basically. A 22-year-old male, his whole family there screaming. His fiance is holding him, just totally panicked. And she jumped into action and felt a pulse. There was a weak pulse. She tried to get him to breathe by rubbing on his sternum and trying to get him to react. Couldn't get him to react. Then all of a sudden realized his pulse had gone away completely. So she starts doing CPR compressions and chest compressions, gets the pulse back. And then once his pulse is back, he's still not breathing. So then she starts the life-saving breaths, like what you see in the movies, right? The mouth-to-mouth. And finally, after a few big breaths, he gurgles up some water, coughs up some water, and starts breathing, sits up, and comes back to life. So literally stopped breathing, heart rate stopped. She restarted his heart rate and then restarted his breathing. So really, really crazy turn of events. Really, really cool story, and just absolutely something we want to make sure we share with you guys. Again, that's Braylon, and she is our first mate on our 3-hour Shell Key shelling trip and Shell Key ferry. So it's pretty cool. It's on our Hubbard's Marina Facebook page, the little interview with her. So if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure you do so. It is pretty awesome that she was able to pull that off. Along with that, want to make sure we also tell you about our fishing trip with Dave and Russell. We had all that information out this week on the Captain Dylan Hubbard Facebook page. So if you missed out, there was a 13-minute fishing video with me, Dave, and Russell. So check out the Captain Dylan Hubbard Facebook page to watch that video. It was pretty awesome. So those are the two big pieces of news, along with hurricane season kicking off and red snapper season kicking off. But we've got some inshore news to talk about with our buddy Capt Mike. What's up, man?
What up, buddy? How are you?
Not much, man. Just another day in paradise, my friend.
Well, good.
Yeah.
I've been just sitting around all day thinking about our T-shirts.
Oh yeah, T-shirts. Yeah. So we had an idea. So for those who aren't aware, we have these awesome Real Animals hats, and I've been wearing some of the Real Animal hats, and a new line of Real Animal hats came out, and Mike was working with us, and now we carry some Real Animals hats at Hubbard's Marina. So those will be hitting the shelf fresh tomorrow. We'll be getting them up on our website soon after. So you can order one online or stop by the shop and grab one. And you can always order one from the Real Animals website as well. But if you're in the shop for a fishing trip, now you'll be able to pick one up in person, along with the Real Animals Catch Lager from Coppertail Brewing that we sell in our office. So Mike and I were talking. We've got the hat. We've got the beer. We're going to need some shirts, right? Some Real Animal shirts. And we thought about it. And what was your idea?
Oh, how was it my idea? I thought it was your idea.
I thought it was your idea. I
thought of characters. I thought of caricatures of the two of us on the shirt would be pretty funny. And then you took it one step further and said we ought to put the A-team on there just to mess with our boys Mahoney and Marshall there from the Sunday morning show,
Well, we'll
which I
agree to
thought was
disagree.
hysterical.
I think that was Mike Anderson's idea, not Dylan Hubbard's. But
I'll take it. I'm not afraid of either one of them. It's all good.
So, if you guys watch our radio shows, Saturday morning we're on 620 WD, Saturday morning we're on 970 WFLA, and we stream live to the Real Animals and Hubbard's Marina Facebook pages. Sunday morning they're on 620 WDAE, and they stream live to just the Real Animals page. And Sunday is Big Ben Marshall, Mike Mahoney, and Mike Anderson. And then Saturday is just me and Mike Anderson. So they get all, I would say, jealous sometimes.
They get a little emotional.
Sometimes, like, we got keys to the building first. They were really emotional about that. And then we got invited to the CCA tournament thing and got to sit up at the front. And they were a little emotional about that. So Mahoney has started this whole thing about the A-team. So we were thinking that we need a caricature T-shirt to match that. So I don't know. I feel like we need to know some kind of graphic artist that makes T-shirt designs really cool to maybe make something cool.
I've got a logo guy. We could call the logo guy and see if he can pull it
I'm trying to bait our logo guy, but he doesn't seem to be reacting.
He's not reacting to it.
I'm writing stuff down.
He's brainstorming over there. Okay.
Oh, okay. I like that. So we need.
Yeah. So
He knows we're not. He knows we're not all that bright. We need his brain.
It will be pretty funny. So
it will be very funny.
That is in the works. People. So keep that in mind, and it's going to be pretty awesome. Jason Richmond said Anderson needs the mohawk like Mr. T. Oh yes,
I like it.
The Mr. T mohawk. That sounds legit.
It's going to be a black boat with a red stripe down it.
A black boat with a red stripe. Like the A-team van, but a boat. I like it.
I like it.
Yeah, see, he's already got ideas going.
I love it. Keep working, kid. Bring them up. We'll get them done and get them out there in everybody's hands. That would be awesome.
So, inshore fishing-wise, a lot of mangrove snapper already, and some pretty big size, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. You guys were talking about it at Hubbard's, and then Captain Scott Moore brought it up that snapper bite is even good to the south. Yeah.
Nice.
So, Scott came on real early in the show this morning, and he had lots of great stuff to talk about, the tarpon bite being good, the snook bite being still really, really good, especially on the beaches and in the passes. And then, surprisingly, because it's just a touch early. I mean, it's really just the 1st of June, but there's been some really big snapper caught already. So, I mean, that's a good sign. And I thought what was interesting, and I haven't seen it by me yet. My mate Josh and I were talking about it this afternoon as we head into this week of charters, that I haven't seen a lot of the fry bait. Normally we don't see that snapper thing really fire off until you get some sort of fry bait running around,
Yeah.
Not that they won't eat a 3-inch greenback or a threadfin, but it just seems like when you see that big hatch of little fry bait, little pilchards and little threadfins all mixed in, running all over the place, gilling up your 1/4-inch net, that's usually when that bite really fires off.
Yeah.
And then, and so it was interesting. I'm thinking, God, the fry's not here yet. I don't know why the snapper are here. Well, Captain Scott Moore, who often wanders out to Rod and Reel Pier out there at Anna Maria and takes a look, said that pier was covered in fry bait.
Oh, wow.
So somewhere there's already been a hatch. Now, he said he thought it was all little threadfins, but he also said that that's a good thing. So, awesome. And again, it might be because that might be, pushing some of those big snapper inshore already. So, Rod and Reel Pier not being very far from Bean Point there, where they do a lot of cut baiting for those tarpon, where they just sit and cut threadfins all day long and put all that cut bait into the water. I'll tell you this: you want a little secret for your listeners?
Yes, sir.
And I've done this before. When the tarpon season's over, okay, like let's call it, a lot of guys will be bored by for sure by mid-July, by the end of July for sure. So even into August, which is normally a great snapper month, for 2.5 months. They've been chumming Bean Point every single day.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
Little mangrove snapper honey hole is what you're saying?
Big mangrove snapper. I've fished it before in late July and August. Just ran over there with some people. I had some raised pictures on the boat years ago when I first had the idea. I'm like, that pass has got to be choked with mangrove snapper.
Yeah.
I went over there and we absolutely crushed them. Crushed them on little cut pieces of threadfin. Just
Nice.
bury your hook in it, drift it into that tide. You don't want the tide ripping. You want the tide maybe just starting in or just starting out, either way. But set yourself up on one of those ledges so that bait can get down a little bit and cut a bunch. And again, start that chum slick, and you'll see a whole path of them come up behind your boat. It's absolutely incredible.
I know.
And it's really a no-brainer. If you think about it, it's a no-brainer.
I feel
They should be there.
I feel like we need to break in that 32 ST, you know?
Well, we at that place we could take the 20.
I guess.
We could take the 26 bait to that spot, or we could just say the heck with it, load up the 32 and run offshore and go after some of them on some of your honey holes. That'd be good too. Yeah, I'd like that.
We'll get the red
that
snapper to the surface like that.
I would like that. I would like that as well.
We can use your boat to fish those red snapper weekends. I like that. My boats all have permits on them. Yeah.
All you gotta do is let me know. I'd love to do it, and I know Miss Beth would love to go. Maybe we can get your bride out there on a weekend and go fill the boat. That'd be fun.
Yeah. I'll
provide the chum.
Josh will chum for us. He's really good at it.
I'll bet. I think it's going to be a good week. I think the tarpon bite, I spent all day today kind of gathering information. The bite was really good today, I heard. I heard it was good on the incoming. I heard it was good on the slack tide and on the outgoing today. Now, here's the wild card. The wild card is we're coming up on the new moon. Mm-hmm. I ran all the way down to Anna Marie Island to grab some crabs from a little crab hookup I had down there.
Oh.
And got back to the dock, ran into one of my favorite tarpon captains, Capt. Trey Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. And Trey was like, man, the bite was phenomenal today, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, great. And then he was like, yeah, they ate every threadfin I had in the boat.
Wow.
I'm like, of course they did, because I ran all the way to Anna Marie and got crabs for them.
And paid $500 for crabs.
Exactly. So, so they were eating live threadfins today under a cork was the bite. And again, incoming, outgoing, it didn't matter.
You know what's ironic about that? I almost called you this morning, but I got busy and neglected to, and I knew I'd talk to you tonight. But Brian Harris, our bait guy at Hubbard's Marina, he is busy catching tons of pinfish right now because it's red snapper season and we have all these trips going and coming. But he's also taken on a new role in where he's catching fresh bait for us for these 39 and 44-hour trips. So instead of bringing 15 or 20 boxes of frozen thread fins out there, he's catching 400 pounds of fresh, dead thread fins, bringing them on the boat. We're salting them down, and we're creating a big brine barrel. And so instead of using frozen, nasty old thread fins, which work really well, don't get me wrong, we've used them for years with great success, but now we have fresh dead bait, which is an even higher step up and a higher quality bait. Looks really good, is a lot more firm, stays on the hook a lot better, and we're getting that fresh supply of it every day, basically. So long story short, he was out fishing for these hundreds of pounds of fresh dead bait yesterday, and he struggled to find thread fins. So what he came across was cigar minnows and live sardines. So the 39-hour trip left today with about 300 pounds of cigar minnows, sardines, and about 100 pounds of thread fins in this big brine barrel. But long story short, he's cast netting all these sardines and cigar minnows and thread fins, and he comes across Bunce's Pass out there on the sandbar, a huge school of tarpon. And he said they wouldn't take thread fins, they wouldn't take the cigar minnows, but the live sardines, they were just choking them as soon as they touched the water. And he said he was about 12 beers deep and caught a ton of tarpon with his buddies. So they had a great time out there, and they were just crushing the tarpon. And he said it didn't matter what was going on, what you were throwing, how loud you were being. They were just chummed up, or that hungry and that ready to eat, even out there in the sandbar in shallower water. So it was pretty cool.
Well, it's one of the more incredible things. If you've never had the opportunity to get on a school that's just absolutely, chewing the bottom out.
Yeah.
As I like to call it. It's too bad because, and again, you can go tarpon fishing 6, 8, 7 times and, never, and just be like, God, these things don't ever eat. They don't eat. When you're there and they're chewing, it's really, really exciting. I mean, it's fantastic,
is.
So, and I think we're going to have some of that this week. I think those fish are staging. Based off everything I'm hearing, I think they're going to go offshore.
Yeah. But don't they do that? You say that they do that more on the full moon, right? Not the new moon?
Well, yes, I would have expected, not being on the water, if you'd have just asked me without all the homework I did today, I would have said I would believe they'd normally go off here on the full. But according to my guys in Boca Grande and my guys here, everybody thinks the way they're acting, they're probably going to go off here in the next 3 or 4 or 5 days. And then they'll be gone. They'll be gone for anywhere from 7 to 10, 11 days. They'll be offshore doing the wild thing. And then when they come back, when they show back up, they'll have the feed bag on and it'll be really interesting. But, we'll see what happens. I got tarpon trips here the next 3 days. So hopefully we can get this thing figured out. Like I said, we did not have a good crab flush today. I was told the crabs didn't flush good at Egmont. Doesn't mean they won't flush later in the week, but I think it's been my experience. If we don't get some rain, we may not get a great crab flush. We may get a flush, but I don't think it'll be a great flush. It's normally, for some reason, that rain, that fresh water pushes a lot more fish out, more crabs out. You get a much better crab flush when it's raining.
It helps the pinfish too, because our bait guy Brian was complaining all day for the last couple of days about the lack of rain, and the back bay waters are too hot, so the pinfish are further from shore, offshore, so he's trapping baits further from shore. Whereas if it starts raining this time of year, he can catch pinfish right in the bay. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so
the water temp has a lot to do with what's going on. Everything that's going on. That might be what's pushing them tarpon offshore a little early.
Yeah,
that water temp being high could be just, and not necessarily that it's too hot, but that it's another 2 weeks. Yeah, a little closer to July. That later full moon. Those fish usually, in my experience, pull offshore on that moon, but they might go here on the new. And I've talked to some really, really great tarpon fishermen today that said they're acting funny, and they're thinking that they're going to pop off here in the next 4 or 5 days, disappear for a while. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, for sure.
All right, buddy.
You never stop, no matter what happens out here. almost 24 years of doing this for a living, and every day I dive into something and learn something new, and it's one of the reasons I love this job. Yeah, for sure.
Always learning.
So, always learning, buddy. Always learning. It's all good. I appreciate the time, my brother.
I appreciate you, and I will see you Saturday morning, my friend.
Yes, sir. Tight lines, everybody. Have a great week.
See you, buddy. Always a pleasure to hear from our friend Capt Mike and get our Inshore Guru update from Capt Mike. And if you are looking for more information, remember you can always pop on over to hubbardsmarina.com. And at hubbardsmarina.com, hit private charters. And under private charter fishing, you can hit inshore fishing. And this is the page about inshore fishing with Capt Mike Anderson. And it even has his phone number. So if you want to call and talk to him directly or book a charter with him, it's right there on that website page. Again, hubbardsmarina.com, private charters, private charter fishing, inshore fishing. That's going to bring you to inshore fishing with Capt Mike Anderson, and have all that information there if you want to give him a shout. Let's give away our first free trip of the night. We're going to give away a 5-hour half day for 2, a 10-hour all day for 2, a Hubbard's Marina swag pack, and that 39-hour trip for 1. Let's start out by giving away the 10-hour tonight. So 10-hour all day trip for 2 guests. Let's find out who our lucky winner is. Stephen Miller from Pembroke, Georgia. Congratulations, my friend. Driving down to do our 39-hour trip all the time. Now you got that 10-hour all-day trip for 2. Congratulations. Remember, you got 5 minutes or less to claim your free trip by texting us at the phone number on the screen, your full home address. that's how you prove you're watching live. So really looking forward to those 18 t-shirts though. Oh, that'll be good. A lot of catchphrases Capt Mike Anderson has to throw in there too. I like your ideas. Everybody in the comments was giving some good ideas there. So with that, we've talked about the weather. We've talked about what's going on, what's coming up, and now it's time to get into some of your questions. As we get into the questions and pull those up, want to make sure we give a shout out to some star senders. We had George Arterburn with a big 500, Richard Harcourt with a big 170. Nick Nieves sent us 1,200. Thank you, my friend. Scott Flynn, Craig Robinson, Stephen Batchelor, Justin Bendis, Ashley Pettit, John Bull, and then D Beers with a big 1,200 as well. Thank you, D. And thank you, everybody who's sending stars as well. So with that, let's get right into the questions and talk about what you guys want to hear. Remember, if you have a question that you want answered live during the show, you do have to text it to the phone number on the screen. If you comment on YouTube or Twitch or Trovo or Facebook, those comments move really fast. It's hard for us to keep track. So text the phone number on the screen if you have a question you want answered live during the show. Are the 39-hour trips loading at a new location? No. We have a new dock. We have our seafood market at Don's Dock and Fuel Dock and Bait Sales Dock at the east end of the boardwalk, but we do not load or unload there. It is purely for simply storage of vessels. So come on down to Hubbard's Marina like normal. Big stinky bait will catch you a red snapper. That's right. Definitely your best option for red snapper is going to be a big stinky bait or a big live bait too. So definitely a good option would be a big strip of bonita, Boston mackerel, octopus, squid, really anything. Red snapper will bite anything, but a big bait is a good option because you want to get selectivity, right? So if you are selecting a bigger fish by using a bigger piece of bait, you're going to have a better chance of catching that bigger fish. So if you want to try to avoid those 16, 17, 18-inch red snapper, those smaller fish, you want to use a bigger piece of bait. So I was telling people today for the 39-hour trip that was loading for red snapper, hey, if we get to a spot and we're targeting red snapper, use a 8, 9, 10-aught hook. Use 60, 80-pound test. I would recommend starting with 80-pound test with 8-aught hooks and a big chunk of bait. Your biggest thread fin, your mullet, your mackerel, your strip of bonita, really big bait, bigger lead, bigger reel even, and drop that down to bottom real slowly. Because a lot of times you're going to get that big fish to bite before you even get near the bottom. The higher off the bottom you are, the quicker he's going to get to the boat, less chance that he's going to run you into the bottom, and less chance that you're going to hook into something like a gag grouper that has to be caught and released. So slow it down on the way to bottom, making sure it doesn't spin, and giving you a chance to catch one of those big red snapper, because the biggest fish are always at the top or bottom of that water column. So you might as well catch the fish that are at the top, the big dog red snapper that's way up off the bottom. I always drop my bait until I can't see it anymore, and then I stop and slow it down with my thumb and drop real slowly. And a lot of times, especially for red snapper, you're going to catch them way up off the bottom. And if you do that with like a chunk of thread fin on a double snell rig, you're going to catch a vermilion or a 16-inch red snapper every time. If you do it with a big old chunk of bait, you're going to feel a lot of little nibbles. But if you just keep slowly dropping it, all of a sudden something's going to come up and just nail that bait. And it's going to be a big dog red snapper, that 16, 17, 18, 20-pound fish. And you're going to make sure that you get only bigger red snapper that way. So think about selectivity. Use bigger baits, big live baits. You can use a small porgy or a small gray snapper that you catch. We had 4 different groups go out in our 5-hour half day today before the 39-hour trip to catch big squirrel fish. A sand perch, a big sand perch is a great red snapper bait. So a big sand perch, small porgy, gray snapper, all great options for bait too. or a big pinfish or pigfish. I can readily catch, next question. Enough about red snapper. I can readily catch red grouper in 90 to 120 foot. We catch a lot of them. The issue is 99% of them are under 20 inches with a rare keeper size fish. I'm using large enough bait, but I think I'm in the wrong spots or doing something wrong. What do you suggest? Definitely going to be the depth of water, right? If you're fishing 80 to 120 foot, that's where you generally start to see the red grouper a little bit better. And even if you use a really big piece of bait, you're still gonna, those red grouper are voracious. A small red grouper will sit there and nibble and eventually come up on a even pretty large piece of bait, right? So the whole selectivity thing I was just talking about works well for red snapper if you're dropping that bait down to bottom slowly. But once you get to bottom, the chance that you might bring up a 16-inch red grouper, if you were fishing in 80 to 120 foot, is pretty high. If you're fishing in 160 foot of water, it's a lot lower, right? So I would suggest first going deeper. Fish 120 to 160 foot, and you're going to get bigger red grouper. The closer you get to 200 foot, the less likelihood, basically the numbers of smaller fish start to drop off. You're going to see less smaller red grouper the deeper you go. So that's going to help. And then fishing the right spots helps too. But ultimately, it doesn't matter where you fish. If you're fishing in 90 to 120 foot of water, you're going to find small red grouper, and you just have to sort through them to find the occasional bigger keeper. But using big baits, big live baits, big dead baits will help. But especially big live baits, maybe a little bit easier to stay away from those smaller red grouper. Big dead baits, you're going to get a lot of those smaller red grouper regardless, right? As far as tackle, it doesn't much matter. Those smaller fish are going to get after you anyway. So slow pitch jiggins, a lot of people are talking about slow pitch jigs. They definitely help, but you're still going to catch a lot of small red grouper on those too. So it doesn't necessarily help you avoid those smaller fish for sure. But it is a good option, slow pitch jigging too. I went on my first 10-hour last week, and I'm hooked. I bought my first 4/0 conventional reel with 65-pound braid and joined the Regulars Club. Awesome. Looking for a dual-purpose spinning rod for trolling on the way out for dolphin or mackerel, as well as hogfish and yellowtail. Is a 4,000 series reel sufficient? No. So trolling on the way out, you want a really big reel for. So generally we're recommending like a 50 wide or 80 wide. The trolling reel we sell in our office that we recommend is a Shimano TLD 50. And that is a 2-speed 50. It's $399 in total for that trolling reel. And it's a good 2-speed larger reel. And it works really well for trolling. And then when you're not trolling with it, you can use it for a big reel for a gag grouper or a big amberjack reel. But to find a rod that you're going to be able to troll with and yellowtail fish with is impossible, because in order to troll, it has to be a really big reel. Because these are bottom fishing trips. We're not going to slow down to reel in a fish. You got to be able to reel in that fish while the boat's moving. So it has to be a really big reel for that reason. If you're on your own private boat, you could troll with a bigger spinning reel still, because when you hook a fish, you're going to stop the boat and you're able to reel in the fish, right? So you have to make sure you're using a bigger reel on our boats, because we're not going to slow down every time you hook a fish. You got to be able to reel in that fish while the boat's moving. All right. Let's see. Oh, a question about what bait you're allowed to use. So remember, there's some strange rules floating around out there. You have to, when you're offshore fishing in federal waters with natural bait for bottom reef fish, you have to use inline, non-stainless circle hooks. So offshore fishing for federal reef species with natural bait, you have to use non-stainless inline circle hooks. So those are the key terms in that rule. We have to tell you those rules. But ultimately, we don't go around checking people's tackle boxes and saying, oh, you can't bring those hooks, right? We kind of tell you the rule, and it's up to you from there. As far as bait is concerned, someone asked, are you allowed to use vermilion snapper for bait? No. The rule of thumb is, or actually the federal law is, it's not a rule of thumb. The law is you can't use any fish that is in the FMP, the Fishery Management Plan, for bait. So if it has a size limit or a bag limit, you can't use it for bait. So you can't use yellowtail snapper, you can't use vermilion snapper, but you could use a white grunt, you could use a porgy, not a pink porgy, or a champagne porgy as they're called, but you could use like a knobbed eye porgy or grass porgy. We use a lot of squirrel fish, lizard fish, that kind of thing. So if it doesn't have a size limit or a bag limit, you can use it for bait. If it does have a size limit or bag limit, you can't use it for bait. Do you recommend bringing bait from home on the 12-hour extreme trip, like bonita strips or octopus? Yeah, I mean, that definitely works. You could bring a little cooler with bait in it, or you could bring some bait to toss in our cooler. What a lot of people do is they'll buy a small bonita in our shop. We sell frozen bonita right in the office, so instead of worrying about buying it and bringing it with you, you can just buy it right at the dock, but it's up to you. What is the status for gag and red grouper during summer? We talked about that already. Remember, red grouper are January 1st through the end of June. Gag grouper open September 1st for 1, 2, or 3 weeks. Do you allow people to do jigging for scamp while others are fishing for bait? Yes, it's very common, and a lot of people do it. You just have to be kind of conscientious of where you're fishing, right? If you're in the middle of the stern, it's not a good idea to really jig, but I like fishing up in the bow. You got a lot more room, a lot more flexibility, and that's where jigging is best. You have the offshore 10-hour overnights. So we do a 10-hour day trip, we do a 12-hour night trip, the 12-hour extreme, and the 39-hour and the 44-hour. Remember, for red snapper, you want to do the 12-hour extreme, 39 or 44-hour trip. The 12-hour night snapper trip is not quite far enough to really target red snapper effectively. You might see a red snapper, but we don't really target them. Definitely going to see a lot of mangrove snapper, vermilion snapper. The last 12-hour night snapper did not do so hot because of the weather. We were expecting 3.5, almost 3.6 foot at one point. It was supposed to be a little breezy. So we were expecting breezy and bumpy conditions. We kind of warned folks of that. But it was more breezy. It was really just downright windy and a lot more bumpy than expected. So due to that weather, it made the night snapper a lot more difficult than we would have liked. So they didn't do so hot. Those who were experienced anglers who were able to fish through it, weather the weather, and hold bottom well, they did catch some nice mangroves. So there were some nice mangroves caught, but a lot of people struggled to fish through that weather, because when the boat's moving up and down a lot, we're in bumpy conditions, you have to more actively fish. You have to constantly move your rod tip with the boat. It takes a lot more experience to fish effectively and to feel the bite. So definitely a little bit more tricky. So rougher weather kind of makes it a little bit more tricky. All right, time to give away another free trip. We did our 10-hour all day. Let's do our 5-hour half day. So we did the 10-hour. Let's give away the 5-hour half day for 2 lucky winners. 1 lucky winner, 2 guests. Winner is Karen Smedbron. Congratulations, Karen, from Wisconsin, our cheese curd connoisseur. And I guess she always hooks us up with the cheese curds, would be what I'm trying to say. And congratulations, Karen, on that 5-hour win. You got 5 minutes or less. Text us your full home address to the phone number on the screen. All right, next question. Shane from Sayreville here. On the 39-hour trip in June, is it feasible to lug a 50 wide to troll out, or just wait and target the red snapper and reef species? Yeah, definitely you can troll on the way out. If you have a stern spot, you have first right refusal to troll. If you don't have a stern spot, you have a chance to troll if other people aren't. But if it's your first trip, I always recommend people kind of start by focusing on bottom fishing. And then over time, you can kind of get dialed in, but it's up to you. What's a good rod for the Shimano I don't know what kind of reel that is. I think he's saying a Shimano 12 2-speed Speedmaster, which I know I'm familiar with the 16 and the 20. The 12 must be a little bit smaller than the 16, so it depends on your reel's drag rating, right? So if your reel's drag rating is it's rated for 30-pound test, then you want a rod that's probably rated for like maybe 20 to 40 or 30 to 50. If you have a reel that's rated for 30-pound test, getting a rod that's rated for 100 pounds makes no sense. It's too stiff. I like a rod with a sensitive tip, something that I'm able to feel the bite with, but it slowly goes into a stiffer backbone. So I have a nice light sensitive tip, really light and sensitive. I can feel the action on the bait really well, but then that backbone gets a lot stiffer. I'm able to fight a big fish. That's what I prefer with my conventional reels and my conventional rods, and I always match up my rods to my reel's drag rating. If your reel is rated for 40 pounds, get a rod that's like 30 to 50 pounds. If your reel is rated to 50 pounds, maybe get a rod that's like maybe 60 to 80. But don't get a rod that's rated for 100 pounds for your reel that's got 20 pounds of drag. You're not going to be able to feel the bite. It's going to be too heavy. It's going to be overpowered. And also keep in mind, you want a rod that is equal or even more expensive than your reel. Your rod feels the bite. Your rod fights the fish. The reel only is functioning to retrieve line and to have a good drag. So if you pay for a super expensive reel, you might have a low gear ratio, which is helpful to give you some power. But it's going to have a nicer drag, a smoother drag. So you're going to be able to fight that fish without putting a lot of pressure on that hook and potentially breaking tackle, right? Think about the video game with that pressure sensor and the line, and if it goes over to one side, it breaks the line. If you have a smooth, more expensive reel, that pressure, you're able to apply more pressure, and it's going to be more smoothly applied, so you're not going to break that line, right? So essentially, you want to make sure you spend a lot of money on your rod and reel, or your rod, so you're able to feel the bite, and then the bend of that rod is going to fight the fish, tire the fish out. So definitely a good idea to spend a good amount of money on your rod. If you're investing $500, maybe get a $200 reel and a $300 rod, because you really want to make sure your rod is going to be able to help you feel the bite. All right, what is the last day to go red snapper fishing? With us at Hubbard's Marina, August 27th. End of day, August 27th, it closes. June 1st through August 27th. Remember, gags, September 1st for 1, 2, or 3 weeks. Red grouper, January 1st through end of June. Triggerfish are open all year except for May and June. Amberjack are May, September, and October. Red snapper is June 1st through end of day, August 27th. What's the best resource to find fishing regulations? HubbardsMarina.com. We have fishing regulations page. If you go to HubbardsMarina.com, you hit fishing trips, scroll down to fishing trip information, and then third one down is going to be fishing rules and regulations. You can visit right there or download the app. That's going to help you out, and you'll be able to type in everything, or you could just watch the show and ask questions. We can always answer your questions on the show. The next part of that question was, do you need a fishing license to fish with us? No. In the state of Florida, if you pay to go saltwater fishing, you're covered under the license of the person you paid to fish with. So if you're paying to fish in saltwater in the state of Florida and someone says you need a fishing license, run, because they are not operating legally. Where can I get frozen shad for bait? Don't recommend it. It definitely doesn't seem to work. We had some fresh shad the other day. Remember how I talked about earlier? We're getting a bunch of fresh bait now. So Brian is out there cast net and bait. So we had a bunch of threadfin. We occasionally see some cigar minnows and sardines in that bin. We had some yellow shad in that bin, and they sucked. They really couldn't get a bite. So shad doesn't seem to work for some reason. But we're experimenting and trying new baits all the time. But I wouldn't recommend shad for right now, at least. Would that mangrove bite at Beam Point be possible from shore? I probably wouldn't be able, or I wouldn't suggest targeting what Capt Mike Anderson was talking about from shore. Mangrove snapper from shore. The Skyway is a great place. But even underneath the Johns Pass Bridge, the south side especially, at slack tide, those rocks, they produce a lot of mangrove snapper. I've caught some really big mangrove snapper around the seawalls of Johns Pass. So even underneath the Hubbard's Marina dock, you can find some really nice mangrove snapper occasionally. So you never know. I'm doing my first 12-hour trip with you guys next week. Anything I should bring that I can't? Anything I should bring with me that I can't get on the boat? Oh, okay. Now I understand. So I would suggest making sure that you have plenty of stuff to eat. Make sure you stay hydrated for the love of God, people. Not you specifically who's asking the question, but just everybody. Take care of yourselves and get hydrated before the trip, right? I had a guy today who was trying to book a 12-hour extreme trip, and he looked like he couldn't walk across the parking lot without getting out of breath. I'm like, dude, you know this is a extreme trip, right? We're going to go really far, really fast. You're going to be in the sun all day. It's really tough on you. He was like, oh, I didn't realize that. So the 12-hour extreme is called the extreme for a reason. You are 100% out in the element. It's hot. We're fighting big fish. You get beat up a little bit on the way out. You're tense. It is not for the faint of heart. If you can't do 50 push-ups, I don't know. There's going to have to be some sort of like physical requirements put in place to make it clear to folks that it's really not a slow, comfortable boat, right? You're going really far, really fast, and it beats you up. You gotta be physically able to handle that abuse and that heavy sunlight with no shade. Or there is shade, but it's a shade, right? There's no air-conditioned cabin. Whereas the Florida fisherman, it's big, it's stable, it's nice. If you get overheated, you go inside, you watch a movie, you sit in the AC, you have some cold drinks, maybe a full 3-course meal. The Florida fisherman in the 39-hour is comfortable. You can really pull that off well. If you're not seasick, it doesn't really matter what shape you're in. You can really pull it off on the 39-hour trip. Whereas the 12-hour extreme trip, it takes a lot, and you really got to be... It's hard on someone like myself. After the trip, I feel beat up and sore and tired, and it takes a lot out of you. So keep that in mind. I recommend getting well hydrated, making sure you have some protein bars, some electrolytes, and then besides that, if you rent a rod and reel, we'll have all your tackle on the boat. If you're bringing your own rod and reel, you want to make sure you have your own tackle, but keep it limited, pack light for sure. All right. Let's go ahead. We did our 5-hour, our 10-hour. Let's give away our Hubbard's Marina swag pack. Let's find out who won the Hubbard's Marina swag pack. Winner is Elise Adele. Congratulations, Elise Adele. You won the Hubbard's Marina swag pack. Remember to text us your full home address and your t-shirt size. We'll get that swag pack out to you very quickly. Let's see. What?
This is from earlier.
For red snapper, I've been told that you need to modify your sonar setting because they have different air bladders. Is this true that it needs to be adjusted? No. We always keep it the same, whether we're fishing for red snapper or grouper or anything, really. What we do for red snappers, you might zoom out a little bit. A lot of times if we're grouper fishing, we're looking at maybe at least me, I'm looking at a 10, 15, maybe 20-foot range. So if I'm fishing in 160 foot of water, the bottom of my screen might be 170, the top of my screen might be 150. And so the bottom is at the lower third of the bottom machine screen, and I'm able to see maybe 10 feet off the bottom if there's a break or a fish show, right? And I'm focused on the bottom. For red snapper, I might go at a 40-foot zoom because I want to see up in the water column what's going on. And you can see these really telltale, what they call Christmas tree fish shows with bigger fish in them. You'll get these bait shows that is just almost straight up and down a lot of times, and it's very light colored, like on our Garmin machines or Furuno machines. It's like a greenish yellow. There's not a lot of red splotches in there, but if you come across a red snapper show, it's pretty obvious because it kind of looks like a Christmas tree, and it's like there's these little red dots in it with these bigger fish. So you get used to it when you see it, and it makes more sense when you see it. Each bottom machine's a little different, color schemes, etc. So it's kind of hard to say what it looks like on your machine, but once you see it, you get it, and then from there, you know what you're looking for, right? For red snapper, when you talk about using big baits like porgies, big sand perch, gray snapper, do you butterfly them, cut the spine out, or just cut them head and tail off and drop them down whole? Yes, yes, and yes. Sometimes we'll cut the tail off and drop down the head. Sometimes we'll cut the head off and drop down the tail. Sometimes we'll butterfly them. Sometimes I cut the head and the tail off and just use the body, which is called a plug. Sometimes I'll fillet it and just use a fillet. Yes. Try a little bit of everything. I like whatever's working, right? If the bite's hot and heavy and they're biting really well, don't bother filleting it. Just cut it right in half, use the head, use the tail. If the bite's a little picky, maybe try butterflying it. Get that smell going in the water. It kind of depends on what's going on around you, right? But try it. Try different things. Find out what works. I want to buy some good shade sunglasses for my trip. We sell Costas in our office, and I've grown up wearing Costas, and that's what I've always worn because that's what we carry in our office, and that's what I've always had and worn myself. I like the Costa Reefton. Excuse me, the Costa Reefton Pros. That's what I've been wearing lately, but the Reefton frames are my favorite, but everybody has their own preference. Bahia makes a pretty nice pair of glasses. Smith makes a pretty nice pair of glasses. A lot of people like Oakley. It depends on what you want.
Something polarized?
Yeah, it's got to be polarized. That goes without saying. Sorry. Blue mirror is also a good idea for offshore fishing. It blocks the most amount of light. So blue mirror, polarized, good idea. But if you ask 20 people, you get 20 different opinions. I personally, if you're asking my opinion, would suggest Costa. Maui Jim, that's another good one. But Maui Jims, Oakleys, they all got bought out, and it's all under, I believe, Gucci or something like that. I don't know. Some big sunglass conglomerate bought all those different brands. Like, I know Oakley and Maui Jims were bought up by that company. Smith is its own brand. So is Bahia. Bahia was started by the ex-VP of Costa Del Mar. But Costas are the tried and true. I like Costas. But if I switched, I'd probably try some Bahias. But I've tried them before at iCast, and they're nice. But they just didn't have a lot of selection yet because they were kind of new to the market. Last time I looked, they only had like 6 or 7 frames. And I don't like change. So I stick to my Costas for now. If you're jigging, this is the last question. It's a good one, though, so I want to get to it. So, if you're jigging, how far do you drop before you start and stop the jig and start jigging? Depends on what you're jigging for. If you're jigging for grouper, drop it all the way to the bottom and start jigging there. If you're jigging for red snapper, drop it till you can't see it anymore and stop. Start jigging there, jig a few times, drop it down 10, 15 feet, jig a little bit more. If you're jigging for amberjack, you stop it halfway down too. So it depends on what you're jigging for. If I'm fishing for red grouper, I'm dropping it to bottom and I'm keeping it in contact with the bottom the whole time. Meaning, if I jig it up, I pull it off the bottom, and if I lower my rod tip down all the way, it should touch the bottom again, or be at least within a foot or two of the bottom. And you want to be able to, like, I'll sometimes jig it up, and then if I drop my rod tip all the way to the water again, it's going to touch bottom, but maybe I keep my rod tip just off the water, so that way it's not all the way slapping the bottom. Sometimes I'll do a little bit of both. Try it to where it's slapping the bottom. Sometimes I'll keep it up off the bottom. Sometimes I'll let it sit on the bottom. Maybe I let it hit the bottom and sit there for 5 seconds. Maybe you never know how that red grouper is going to react, or that scamp grouper, or that gag grouper. Red snapper, generally, I'm going to keep it up in the water column and use a bigger bait, bigger jig, trying to keep that selectivity high, right? If you drop down a medium slow pitch jig, you're going to get a ton of vermilions in smaller red snapper. All right. We talked a lot tonight, answered a lot of questions. I'll answer any questions I missed after the show. And, of course, if you're a supporter, you can join us for the after show, and we'll answer your questions in depth in our supporters after show. That private after show will start at 8:50. So with that, let's find out who won our 39-hour trip for one lucky winner. Hopefully, we'll see you next weekend. Every Sunday night we do this show. Every Sunday night we give away tons of free trips. So join us next weekend, Sunday night, for another episode of the live stream show. Also, make sure you stay tuned. Wednesday, we've got some news. So tune in Wednesday morning for some news. And I think that's about it. Tune in Wednesday morning for some news. You don't want to miss out. We'll see you next week, Sunday night, for another episode of the live stream show. And with that, let's find out who won our 39-hour trip for one lucky winner. Don't forget, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too darn busy. Thanks for joining us tonight, guys. Let's find out who that lucky winner is of the 39-hour trip for one. Robert Miller. A family win tonight. That's pretty cool. Congratulations, y'all. Also, we'll hopefully see you next week for another episode. Don't forget, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too darn busy. Thanks for watching, and thanks for tuning in and being a part of our Hubbard's Marina family. We'll see you next week for another episode.